Okay, thanks everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, people online? Hopefully, yes. Okay. Thanks, Cassie, for the lovely introduction. So today I'm going to give you a little bit of the research context behind today's talk. Tell you a little bit about the data I'm going to focus on today. And then I'll move on to the, as I always say, like the fun or the meaty bit, the findings. Now, those of you who know me, you know that I tend to over-prepare. So I'll do my best to cover at least the first. As you can see, these findings are metafunctionally organized. So I'll try to go to interpersonal, ideational, and then we'll see how we go. Okay. Okay. Whoops. Maybe I accidentally pressed something. Yeah. Okay. So for this, you got a grant to do this COVID-19 recovery fellowship project. And for it initially, I only focused, I did an kind of very preliminary SFL-informed exploration of the online mental health discussion forum hosted by Beyond Blue, which is an Australian mental health support organization. And my main focus, because of the nature of this grant, was, or still is actually, on discussion threads dealing with mental health management during or post COVID-19. I think it's still early and hard to tell during or post, but yeah, okay. And here we have just a screenshot of that page. Why Beyond Blue? I wanted to listen to Jim and do a little bit of PDA, finally not criticize everything that's gone wrong. Apparently, according to their own website, Beyond Blue is Australia's most well-known and visited mental health organization, and they leverage current and emerging technologies to provide a community with easy to access information and tools developed in partnership with the community sector and leading experts. So let's see what they have been doing well and what kind of resources they have deployed. And here again, you can see the home page. And as you can see, they provide different kinds of virtual support. They have different materials, educating people on different mental health issues and providing different practical strategies for maintaining well-being. And when it comes to the online support, you can see that online forms just one kind. So you can call them, chat online, or email them. So during my initial exploration, one of the discussion threads titled Mixed Emotions, maybe you've seen it around, been advertised a lot in shopping centers even, piqued my interest because it was explicitly linked to a broader online mental health initiative started by Beyond Blue in November last year. So it was kind of embedded, I'm not using this in an SFL sense, please, okay, kind of embedded into our larger online initiatives. So not just the interaction through discussion forums, but it's the whole initiative trying to help people. So that was quite interesting for me. So it wasn't isolated as usually you would have on different discussion boards. So I decided to broaden my focus and look at the Mixed Emotions Initiative to explore the affordances of digital communication, which does include discussion forums, but not only that. And the affordances for providing online mental health support. So this is from their media release in November. So they said from today, a new early intervention initiative called Mixed Emotions will appear on radio, digital channels, and streaming services, reassuring people that mixed feelings are common and encouraging people to reach out to the coronavirus mental well-being support service. And actually, because today I can't focus on all of the digital channels and everything, I'll be focusing on this webpage, the homepage, which is actually part of this coronavirus mental well-being support service, but it serves as kind of a homepage, okay, for that. So a little bit about this webpage. So as you can imagine, a truly multimodal text. We have verbiage, writing. We do have still images also integrated with writing, we can see hyperlinks leading to other resources. There is video, which again introduces moving English, or films introduces speech. Very limited movement, I have to say. Just a little bit of facial expressions, which makes it easier for the actors to act out these mixed emotions, but pretty static, I would say. We do have what I've termed like action blocks, so what to do, okay? And these serve as kind of also hyperlinks leading to different strategies, and call for action, so, link to the discussion forum where users can post and reply, okay, share their feelings, and also share their own strategies for maintaining mental health. So today, obviously, again, I can't focus on everything. So because this is the first time I'm presenting on this work, I thought I'll give you more like an overview of some of the key findings that I found the most interesting when it comes to verbiage and also visual communication, but I'll be mainly focusing still on images, okay, not on movement, and I won't be focusing on voice for two reasons. First of all, I've already over-prepared, and the second reason is I got Lily Aristimuño, many of you know her. She's been helping me lately with the analysis of voice and paralanguage, and she's overseas and can't help me. So I'm not willing to be that vulnerable during the Q&A. So I'll leave that for some other time. Okay. So the analytical tools, a range of them. Okay. So for verbiage, I relied on an SFL model of discourse semantics. And for the visual, I relied on a social semiotic take on the grammar visual design. Now, I am going to be drawing on a number of tools today, so I'll introduce them as we go, although because this is the only audience I think I can do this with, so I'll assume some kind of knowledge. I won't go into depth into all of the tools, but I thought I would just give you an overview of some of the interesting findings and something, looking at the same multimodal text from different perspectives and what that may give us. Okay, so let's start with the interpersonal. So the resources used to, the campaign or the initiative uses on this web page to engage and build rapport with the service user. So when it comes to language resources, what I found is that this campaign tries to enact a community of shared thoughts and feelings. So the sense of us, we, and not only that, but we have a lot of instances of you and even I, so personal lived experiences. As you may have guessed, this is very relevant for us. So the attitude system from the appraisal framework, I'm not going to go into detail with, I think we've had enough talks already, but the three types of attitude just affect from my data set, for example, when you're excited for the day ahead, appreciation, for example, the last couple of years have been tough, and judgment, for example, vulnerable population. So in this web page, and I'm not surprised at all by this, the most common attitude type is affect. But what was interesting for me when it comes to this web page is the emoters, okay, so which is the ideational bit. So now you should all be familiar with couplings as well. So the source entities, and I'll come back to what these are, but the sources of these feelings or emoters, with the function as emoters. Here we have the collective emotive we being used quite often to create a community of shared feelings. And here there's only one example. So we might be hopeful for the future. There is a lot of instances of you as the emoter that's used to speak directly to the service user. In that case, so when you're excited for the day ahead, now If we talk about the homepage, it's more like a synthetic use, so talking to everyone directly. When we talk about discussion forums that you can click on and be engaged, it's really you, like specific person. It's more like IU communication. And the embedded discussion thread, among the other means of interactive online support, also allows for the introduction of I as emoter, which I believe is quite important affordance when it comes to this kind of communication, because it gives voice to the service user as a community member. So for example, I feel devastated, dumb. This is an example from the discussion thread. There are occasional instances of appreciation, but these are typically targeted at the ongoing hardships shared by the community. In this case, in my example here that you see at the top of this slide, so this time entities have been tough for all of us. And importantly, there is a general lack of judgment coming from the mixed emotions community or the text producers of the initiative, which I think is quite interesting because it kind of serves to create a safe space for people to reflect and learn and act without feeling like they're being judged. Okay. All right. So not only creating the community to share feelings and thoughts, but what I believe is that language resources are also used to engage the user in a way that they feel that their thoughts and feelings are acknowledged. And here I want to look at another system from the appraisal framework, and that's engagement. I'm not going to go into delicate options, so just the basic monogloss, so bare assertions. For example, the last couple of years have been tough, versus heterogloss, so phrasing your propositions as in a way that they open dialogic space, acknowledge some alternative positions, and of course that space can be contracted through, for example, negation. In this case, you're not alone, or expanded. So for example, we have here modalities. So one moment we might be excited for the day. So why bother with this, and why is it important? Well, yeah, it is true that monogloss in my data set is used to describe and evaluate the ongoing situation, like the example that I gave you like a minute ago. And also defining and describing mental health issues, so what something is. In this case, defining stress here, the example. So stress is a common response to difficult situations or events. But for me, what's interesting is that heterogloss is actually more common. And it's used for two things. So contracting heterogloss is mainly used to acknowledge and then fend off the user's negative self-judgment. So this is not judgment coming from some other source, but still there is that feeling that the initiative does want to acknowledge that we may feel and judge ourselves in a negative way. And this example, you're not alone. I just want to clarify here why I would consider this even self-judgment. While it is true that we can analyze this as like you're part of the community, we can also analyze this as invoking, at least I understand it as kind of also invoking a negative judgment in terms of normality. And if we go back to the aims of the initiative, they want to reassure people that their feelings are common. So they're not weird, weak, or just plain weirdos, okay? Because they can't cope. So, but you're not alone, you would be self-judging yourself in this term. So they're saying, okay, you may feel alone, but you're not alone. And another thing is that expanding options are frequently used whenever talking about affective experiences. So for example, here we have one moment we might feel, so might feel excited for the day, which kind of opens space for differing experiences. So it does allow the service user to agree or disagree. And it prevents the initiative from like being very prescriptive. And this is how you feel. So I think very important for user engagement. And one more thing, I warned you that I'll be using a lot of tools. So enacting community shared feelings, engaging through the user by acknowledging their positions, but also when it comes to direct interaction, okay, we can also look at empowering the user from the perspective of negotiation, which deals with interaction in dialogue, so direct interactions. Just a brief overview. So we can differentiate between action exchanges and knowledge exchanges. And we have different roles in these interactions. So we have the primary actor, who's the person doing the action, or the primary knower holding control over the knowledge. And their partners in a dialogue are termed as secondary actors or knowers, so A2s or K2s. So again, why would I bother with this? Isn't engagement enough? Well, in direct interactions, oh, sorry, again. Oh, thank you. I think that one of the great affordances of hyperlinks here on this web page is to allow the initiative to empower the service user again by assigning them the A1 role. What do I mean by that? So here's an example of hyperlink from, so learn what languishing is. And then the service user actually needs to click on it. So applying and doing and having that feeling that they are doing something about their own mental health. Okay, so actually being empowered to take action at this very stage and moving towards more material outcomes. And I think that's a very important affordance, at least from personal experience, and clicking and doing something, you know, like making a timetable for something and come back to all the readings that you need to do. And then you never do them, but you still have that satisfaction of clicking on making a plan. And coming back to the embedded discussion thread, I think it allows for also the empowerment of the entire online support community. So it's not just the text producer, the initiative makers, but the entire online support community with shared lived experiences, and empowers them in terms of both reflection and action. And what do I mean by that? Is in discussion thread, community members assume the K1 role. They're the ones sharing the knowledge, okay? When reflecting on their feelings and sharing strategies for their mental health management. Again, the example they already used, just to make it a bit easier for you, so you don't have to read new examples. But also community members assume the A1, A2 roles, not just A1, so not just clicking, but in discussion form, they can also give, in this case, advice like you should ring the support line service, support line for coronavirus, and give the number. And then, of course, it's up to the other user to actually do it or not do it. Okay, so language resources for building rapport and empowering the user. This has been complemented by the use of different visual resources. And in particular, I think direct gaze is very interesting here. And according to Preston van Leeuwen, so direct gaze between represented participants and the viewer creates visual form of direct address, demands that the viewer enter into some kind of imagery relation with him or her. And here I have two examples. So one is a screenshot from the short video, and one is still image that's used when as a poster for a particular mixed feeling. So direct gaze between the represented emoter, I would say. So we can see actually a whole coupling here in these images. So the emoter and the, especially in the second one, you can see trying to kind of act out this worry, hope feeling. And there is that direct relationship between them and you as the service user. So again, coming back to you're not alone. Now, another reason why I decided to show these two images is that this process of enacting intimacy. So in everyday interaction, social relations, as I'm sure you all know, determine the distance, literally and figuratively, we keep from each other. So here we have an extreme close-up. And just to give you some context, because I'm not going to show you the video, so the voiceover, are you looking forward to the future but feel uneasy about it? So with the section uneasy about it, we're shown this extreme close-up. So we have affect reflecting on their feelings, something very personal and intimate, and that intimacy has been expressed through this extreme close-up between this represented emoter and the service user. Here we have the medium close shot, which is still, according to Kress and Van Leeuwen, kind of on the decline, also close shot, but still there is that distancing if you compare it to when they reflect and talk about feelings. And this was quite interesting for me because yes, it's still enacting some kind of intimacy, but it's as if they are trying to distance themselves in order to observe this particular phenomenon of worry, hope, and study it and deal with it. And the reason I'm mentioning this because during my PhD, I was dealing with a lot of what Jim and Michelle would call axitac, or what Georgia would call technicalized attitudes, but I was dealing with it in language. So how do we try to discharge the interpersonal from attitudes and move into technicality? And I found this very interesting, and I'll come back to that now with the ideational, because there seems to be correlation visually here. So moving from the extreme close-up with the feelings and then just zooming out along the line and trying to distance from that raw feeling and try to observe it more from a more ideational perspective and do something about it. Which brings me to the ideational bit. So the resources used for construing knowledge and modeling agency. And I've been referring to some entities that are being coupled with attitudes. And when I talk about entities, I am referring to Jing Hao's concept of an entity as a discourse semantic resource for naming sources, for example, the community, we, the service user, you or I, things like physical phone, I'm referring to that one here, activities, for example, work, semiotic phenomena, for example, discussion, properties, for example, in my work on mental health, depression, places, Australia, or time the last couple of years. And now I'm just interested in sources. So the community, we, you, I, and properties that are used to name mental health issues. And what's important for today is that they can enter different figures. So they can participate in state figures which construe static field relations, for example, being tough or being a common response, or in occurrence figures which construe dynamic activities like learning about languaging, visiting the discussion thread, and so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to building the knowledge of mental health issues, so coming back to technicalizing attitudes, when you go to the web page, the top is all about, are you feeling hopeful? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling so raw feelings, attitudes, okay? Then what happens as you scroll and go down is the technicalization of attitude through state figures that are actually defining property entities so that the mental health issues can be studied and addressed. And as I mentioned, this phenomenon has been referred to as axitac, or more recently in Georgia Carr's work on sex education as technicalized attitude. And I must say, at least for the purpose of my research, I prefer the second one. And the reason why I prefer it because Georgia sees it technicalization as a process that can occur over time. And in this case, I'll just show you logogenetically in my data set what it looks like. So as I said, it starts with raw emotions. Then we have what worry hope is. So when you keep switching between looking forward to the future and being worried about it. Then we have a hyperlink just below that. Find out how much worry is too much worry. And then you click on that and it allows for further technicalization. Now you're going into clinical psychology. So this worry hope campaign is like a bridge, okay? And then you have definitions of anxiety and depression. So this is how technicalization goes. And coming back to the visual one, why I was very intrigued by the medium culture as opposed to extreme, this seems to be, the verbal resources seem to be used in conjunction with the over taxonomies, which we all know we use to build knowledge, right? To build deeper taxonomies. And they, as you can see here, visually include the subordinate, like a headline. And then we have participants or a tree here that may be realized verbally, visually, or both. But it's the visual outline that sets out that taxonomy. And this is what it looks like. So first talking about the feelings, da, 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 da. Then we have 1, 2, 3, boom. Not any more couplings charged, but more like the poster people, culturally diverse, I must say, also reinforcing you're not alone. The name, happy flat, bored stress, worry hope, below definitions, hyperlinks, and then you learn about that. So it's not only about, now, are you feeling this? You might be this, you might be that, and now you're learning what something is. And what does that allow us? It allows us to move from reflection to action and actually to model that kind of agency of improving your mental health. And these participants are actually what I would call like exemplary participants of these source entities, these people that are moving from state figures to occurrence figures, which I've also observed in, if you were listening to some of my talks on the work I've done with Sally on promoting vaccination. So what I mean by that, so again, you start with state figures or the level of lexical grammar, relational processes of being or feeling sad, worried. So one might be hopeful for the future and then feel really worried about it. But then you move on to occurrences with typically realized by behavioral processes here. So find out how much worry is too much worry. So learning or talking about it, another behavioral process. And finally, doing something about it. So help relax the mind, join the mixed emotions discussion, share experiences, connect with others. So you're moving from being and feeling to learning and finally doing. And as I guessed, I'll stop before the textual one. We can talk about it during the question time. So thank you for listening.